In a promo at the Revolution Pro Wrestling show in London last weekend, Styles said the following. A big thank you to our wrestling friends over at Wrestling Memes for this footage.
I'm not sure what the future holds for me. And there's a slot in the Royal Rumble.
If you put me in that Royal Rumble, I will kick some ass for you guys. So, not an out-and-out confirmation, but a definite tease for what AJ's plans might be this Sunday. Again, a big thank you to Wrestling Memes for that footage, but next time, film it in landscape. Our top story today is that former WWE World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan has announced his retirement from professional wrestling. Yesterday, Bryan tweeted that due to medical reasons, he would be retiring with immediate effect. He then appeared on last night's episode of Raw, where he expanded upon his decision. Bryan explained that he underwent tests about a week and a half ago, which revealed that his brain was in much worse shape than he previously thought. BW Insider is reporting that these tests took place in New York City the Thursday before the Royal Rumble. Bryan then informed the select few higher-up WWE officials of his decision prior to the announcement yesterday. This announcement comes days after a report from F4W Online, which said that Bryan had tried to give his notice to WWE, but was told no. According to the report, WWE said Bryan did not have the right to give his notice to the company as his contract had been frozen since he became injured last year. This is the same situation that kept Rey Mysterio under contract for months, despite him being inactive and wanting to leave. This has some speculating that Bryan's retirement could be a formality to get out of his WWE contract and he will be making a return to the ring in the future. By all accounts, however, this seems unlikely and the retirement looks to be legitimate. Our top story today, though, is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Hulk Hogan's 10-inch penis. In case you didn't know, in which case you better call somebody, Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against gossip website Gawker has been in court this week. Terry Bollea, Hogan's real name, is suing Gawker because they leaked his sex tape with Heather Clem. Gawker claim it's in the public interest. Hogan said it was a private affair. Yesterday, the trial came down to what exactly, in the crazy world of professional wrestling, is real and what isn't. During the proceedings, an interview Hogan did with Bubba the Love Sponge was brought up, where he said that he had a 10-inch penis. Hogan then clarified that he was not talking about his own, Terry Bollea's penis, but the penis of the character Hulk Hogan. He explained further, "Well, it's not mine because mine isn't that size, but we were discussing the length of Hulk Hogan's. I do not have a 10-inch penis. No, I do not. Seriously." He went on to say when conducting interviews, he takes artistic liberty by embellishing stories, exaggerating things that have happened, and even outright lying in the past, which can all be summed up as he was in character as Hulk Hogan when he did these interviews, which is a public persona. Terry Bollea, who was in the sex tape, however, is private and thus not in the public interest like Gawker claim. But wait a second, does that mean he was never the original bassist for Metallica? And he didn't once work 400 days in a year? Hulkamania has run wild over the truth! Hello and welcome to this WrestleTalk news flash. Unfortunately, this first ever mini news video that we've done is to report something very sad. Former WWE wrestler Chyna has passed away. The news was broken by Chyna's official Twitter page with the message, "It is with deep sadness to inform you today that we lost a true icon, a real-life superhero. Joanie Laurer, aka Chyna, the 9th wonder of the world, has passed away. She will live forever in the memories of her millions of fans and all of us that loved her." Shortly following this message, Pro Wrestling Sheet's Ryan Satin reported Laurer was found dead on Wednesday at her home in Los Angeles, citing she had been on medication for anxiety and sleep deprivation, although her current cause of death is unknown. Chyna might have had a checkered recent history, starring in 6 adult films since 2004, effectively blacklisting her from the WWE, but that shouldn't overshadow the enormous contribution she made to the business. Chyna was a founding member of D-Generation X, the first and only ever female wrestler to hold the WWF Intercontinental Championship, and she possessed such a genuinely intimidating physical presence that she didn't look out of place competing with and beating several prominent male wrestlers. An article on WWE's website last year probably said it best when they declared her the most dominant female competitor of all time. With wrestlers like Sasha Banks, Charlotte, Bayley and Becky Lynch revolutionizing the WWE's women's division right now, it's important to remember that these performers didn't just come out of nowhere. They stand on the shoulders of the female wrestlers that came before them, and few shoulders are stronger than the powerful deltoids of the now past Joanie Laurer. Our top story is so big that today's entire episode is devoted to it. The WWE brand split is returning. We'll start with SmackDown. For the first time in its almost 17-year history, the show will now air live every week. From the 19th of July, it will air on Tuesdays on the USA Network. This has been rumoured ever since the show moved to the USA Network, which is also home to WWE's flagship show Raw, and the hiring of respected sports announcer Mauro Ranallo earlier this year. In the press release announcing the move, WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon said, "WWE's flagship programs will both leverage the incredible depth of our talent roster, distinct storylines, and the unpredictable nature of live TV. This move will undoubtedly build more excitement and deepen engagement with our fans around the world." This means WWE will air at least 5 hours of live programming a week, with that amount going up to around 8 when there's a pay-per-view, or just short of a gazillion when it's WrestleMania weekend. SmackDown will also be aired live in the UK from the same date. It'll be interesting to see how this affects WWE's audience. Many have been critical of Raw's 3-hour duration and commentary team. This might see viewers drop watching Raw and just following SmackDown instead, which brings us on to the next part. The announcement of SmackDown going live also included the huge news that the WWE brand split will be returning. That's right, Raw and SmackDown will now have their own distinct rosters, unique storylines, and separate writing teams. The original brand split was first implemented in 2002 as a way to showcase the enormous amount of talent that flooded WWE after the collapses of WCW and ECW. This saw everything from brand-specific pay-per-views, 2 world titles, and arguably the best in-ring era in the history of the company with the SmackDown 6. By 2011, though, when the brand split was abandoned, the gimmick was a mockery, with wrestlers frequently appearing on both shows for no reason. One of the more exciting parts of the brand split, however, was the annual talent draft that decided which wrestlers would appear on which show. F4W Online is reporting that the New Era's draft is scheduled for the 11th of July Raw, and that the majority of talent do not yet know where they'll end up. Interestingly, Brock Lesnar is also being advertised for the 11th of July Raw. F4W Online are also reporting that Vince McMahon is pumped up and full of ideas for the brand split. But if you're essentially going to split your roster, why on earth would you get rid of so many mid-carders over the last month? The last few weeks alone have seen the releases of Cody Rhodes,
Damien Sandow, Wade Barrett and Adam Rose. It's said that WWE will continue to aggressively pursue wrestlers from outside companies to fill the Raw and SmackDown rosters with as many top stars as possible, which will include calling up a lot of talent from NXT. Speaking of NXT, it was announced by Triple H yesterday that the next takeover special on the WWE Network on the 8th of June will be called NXT TakeOver The End. Could this be linked to the brand split in some way? As for the championship belts, Dave Meltzer is reporting that there'll once again be 2 world titles when the brand split begins. Apparently the US title and Intercontinental titles will be on separate shows, while the women's division will be exclusive to either only Raw or SmackDown. The tag team titles will likely be on both shows. Regarding when the actual decision was made to bring back the brand split, it was reportedly only in the last few weeks, with people in the company being informed at last Sunday's Extreme Rules.
Hello and welcome to this WrestleTalk News Flash. I'm Francesca Wood, and boy, this is a big one. Don't be rude. Now, former WWE World Heavyweight Champion and company Golden Boy Roman Reigns has been suspended for 30 days for his first violation of the WWE wellness policy. I know what you're thinking, this has to be a storyline, right? Well, no, it doesn't look like it. Earlier this evening, WWE announced the suspension in a statement on their website, which included a tweet from Reigns saying, "I apologise to my family, friends and fans for my mistake in violating WWE's wellness policy. No excuses. I own it." It's also unlikely that WWE would book a story like this, as it looks pretty bad on the company to have their top star being suspended for drug use. This just goes to show that the company is getting more and more serious about cracking down on drug use by their roster.
Our top story today, which is sponsored by the pro wrestling magazine FSM, leads directly on from Cesaro's anger on where he was drafted, as it seems he isn't the only one that wanted to go elsewhere. Firstly, Sasha Banks. She replied to the Cesaro shoot promo on Twitter with, "You're speaking my language." That right there was for the clap emojis. The sound clap. I don't think there's an emoji for gonorrhea. In the past, Banks has always called SmackDown the wrestling show, and she's been very vocal of her love for the SmackDown 6 era with Eddie Guerrero. But Sasha found herself drafted to Raw as well. Other wrestlers who might be unhappy with the WWE draft results are Alberto Del Rio, who went to SmackDown while his off-screen girlfriend Paige was drafted to Raw, and Big Cass, who went to Raw, and his real-life girlfriend NXT call-up Carmella, who went to SmackDown. These couples will now be on separate rosters with different schedules. It seems as though the draft was done almost as a shoot, with many of the roster finding out their fates as the picks were being read out live on SmackDown. Everyone is getting suspended from WWE. First up is Alberto Del Rio. It's easiest that we do this in chronological order. Yesterday, WWE announced that Jose Rodriguez, that's Del Rio's real name, will be starting his 30-day suspension effective today, the 18th of August, for his first violation of their wellness policy. Del Rio was released from his first run with the company back in 2014 for unprofessional conduct and returned last October. This is interesting, as Daily Wrestling News have been reporting that Del Rio might leave WWE once his contract expires this October because he's unhappy with how he's been positioned since his return. They also reported back in May that there was tension backstage between Del Rio and Triple H, as Alberto had been promised a main event push, but the game stopped it from happening. That same site then reported earlier this week that Triple H was responsible for splitting up Del Rio from his real-life girlfriend Paige in the WWE draft to show him who's boss, where Paige went to Raw and Del Rio went to SmackDown. The game reportedly believes Del Rio parties too much, is a liability to the company, and is a bad influence on Paige, who WWE has high hopes for. Which brings us on to our next suspension. Paige has been suspended by WWE. Just a few hours after WWE announced Del Rio's suspension, they then said that Saraya J. Bevis, Paige's real name, will also be suspended for 30 days for her first violation of the company's talent wellness policy. All on her 24th birthday, no less. Many happy returns. Paige hasn't been on WWE television since the 27th of June episode of Raw, where she lost to Charlotte in a women's championship match, and has been out of action with shoulder and back injuries. PW insiders say she was filming Total Divas in New York this week, and that her suspension might become a storyline on the show. As both of their suspensions begin today, they will be eligible to return return to WWE on the 17th of September. But Dave Meltzer has previously reported that Del Rio might have an early out clause in his contract, which will allow him to leave in September rather than October. So perhaps we've already seen the last of Del Rio in WWE. Again. But where would he go? Major League Wrestling are reporting that both Del Rio and Paige were seen at Combate Americas last week, which is a Spanish-language MMA promotion that Alberto was connected to before he rejoined with WWE last year. The speculation is that he might have been lining up post-WWE career work. And now, thirdly, All Red Everything Eva Marie has also been suspended by WWE for 30 days, effective immediately, for her first violation of the company's talent wellness policy. Unlike Del Rio and Paige, Eva Marie actually has a match at SummerSlam this Sunday, being booked in a 6-woman tag match with Natalya and Alexa Bliss against Becky Lynch, Carmella and Naomi. Wait a second, is this just another attempt to get out of wrestling a match? Eva Marie's a genius. Just don't know what to believe anymore. Our question for you today is, what in the blue heckins is going on in WWE right now? 3 suspensions in 2 days. I've already had to rewrite this news episode twice because people keep getting suspended. By the time you watch this, just assume there are no wrestlers left in WWE. That's it. 30-day break. Have a nice summer holiday, people. After almost 2 years after signing with UFC in November 2014, CM Punk made his mixed martial arts debut in the same venue where he told Vince McMahon he was leaving WWE on the 27th of January 2014 Raw, the Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. Having no professional or amateur experience in MMA, Punk went up against the brown belt 2-0 record holding Mickey Gall. Punk went for Gall as soon as the bell rang, but the 24-year-old took him down to the mat and spent the next 2 minutes pounding on Punk while trying to transition into a rear naked choke. Once he got it locked in, Punk tapped, just 2 minutes 14 seconds into the first round. In a typically brilliant promo after the fight, Punk promised, "I will be back, believe it or not. This was the most fun I've ever had in my life, the second best night of my life besides marrying my wife, obviously." Hopefully his wedding night lasted longer than 2 minutes 14 seconds. Punk continued saying, "It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up. And that if someone says you can't do something, prove them wrong." It was spine-tingling stuff. God, I miss Punk. The overwhelming reaction following Punk's defeat has been of respect. As the Iron Sheik eloquently tweeted, a 37-year-old guy making his MMA debut on the sport's biggest stage takes a substantial amount of testicular fortitude. The CM Punk has the real balls. God bless you, Bubba. While Mick Foley tweeted, "I'm proud of CM Punk for taking a risk for making a statement." And MVP pointed out at the event, no matter what, CM Punk is a draw. All the wrestling fans left. This place is empty. And quick as a whip, the very witty Kayfabe News posted the story, "CM Punk puts over developmental talent Mickey Gall." But what's next for Punk? Going by his post-fight promo, he definitely wants to fight again, and he's keen to get back into training as soon as possible. "I think they're going to force me to stay out because I have this ear and I've got a couple of stitches in my eye, but I'll be back in there Monday if it was up to me. But whether that's in the UFC or not remains to be seen. I haven't talked to Dana White yet, but it's not like I fought a good fight, so..." John Pollock of the Fight Network did get a chance to speak with the president of the UFC though. "Dana White tells me that if CM Punk has another fight, it probably shouldn't be in the UFC." This echoes what UFC's color commentator Joe Rogan said in the post-fight wrap-up. "What Punk did was great. It was courageous, but it was delusional. There's a reason brown belts don't compete with white belts in jiu-jitsu tournaments. It's because it's not fair. And what we saw tonight is not fair. If I had to give CM Punk some advice, I hate to harp on this, I'd say fight as an amateur. Fight people at your level. He wants to do this, he wants to challenge himself, he wants to continue, God bless him. He's a fun guy, I like him, but this is not the way to do it." Like Paul Heyman calling out Goldberg on his client Brock Lesnar's behalf, and Goldberg replying. This has been building since last week when both Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer and Jim Ross reported that a Goldberg vs Brock Lesnar match was all but confirmed for Survivor Series next month. WWE furthered the speculation last week when Goldberg's upcoming ESPN interview was teased on both Raw and SmackDown. Because if there wasn't a backstage relationship between Bill and WWE, that ain't happening. Goldberg didn't say anything new in that interview, just that if he did return to WWE, he'd want to face Brock Lesnar, because that match went so well last time. Then on yesterday's Monday Night Raw, off the back of Goldberg's ESPN comments,
out came Lesnar's advocate Paul Heyman to challenge Bill to a fight on his client's behalf. Heyman said Goldberg is the one blemish on Brock Lesnar's career. Cough, UFC 200 drug test failure, cough! And the Beast wants to rectify it. Goldberg tweeted almost immediately in reply, booking my flight to answer that big mouth Paul Heyman's challenge next week in person on Monday Night Raw. Hashtag who's next, hashtag see you there WWE, which was later confirmed by Michael Cole on commentary. So it's official, Bill Goldberg is returning to WWE. Did anyone else have trouble with their Survivor Series stream last night? The WWE Network seemed to cut out like half the main event for me. It's either that or Goldberg squashed Brock Lesnar in like a minute 30. Oh, it was the squash one. On Friday, I stood here and ran down the rumors and betting odds going into Survivor Series. Brock Lesnar was the heavy favourite with both the bookies and Wrestling Dirt Sheet saying he'd win with Goldberg getting a big send-off. Because that makes most sense. How can a guy who hasn't wrestled for 12 years and is nearly 50 beat Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate? The guy who ended The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak, knocked out Randy Orton at SummerSlam, and who's been booked to dominate the entire roster for years. With 2 spears and a jackhammer, apparently. Last night, after the longest Survivor Series match in history, with the men's elimination match going 52 minutes and 55 seconds, we got what might have been the shortest main event to a major WWE pay-per-view in several decades. With Goldberg beating Lesnar quicker than you can see CM Punk at UFC 203. Their match went just 1 minute 25 seconds. It raises so many questions. Is there heat on Brock Lesnar? Why did Goldberg's kid have his top off? And who really is Byron Saxton? But the most pressing one is, why did WWE make Brock lose in such a short match? According to Pro Wrestling Sheath, it's because WWE want to keep Goldberg looking strong because he's already signed a deal to appear in the Royal Rumble match at the Alamo Dome in January. Apparently this was decided earlier in the week, and it leads to speculation that a WrestleMania 33 appearance might be in the works for Goldberg, which is expected to be a rematch against Brock Lesnar, who will finally get a win. Another reason why his Survivor Series match was so short with such little offense from Brock is because of Goldberg's physical condition. After not wrestling in over a decade and him admitting he tweaked his shoulder on the Go Home Raw, we were all sort of wondering what sort of match the two would put together to protect Goldberg from Lesnar's very physical style. Turns out the answer is hardly make them wrestle at all. Dave Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio, however, that Goldberg's shoulder wasn't the main reason behind the short match length. That much I do know, and that is not the case. When Bill agreed to stay, the idea was, let's book the match to get Bill over. He's definitely going to be back, and he's definitely going to work with Brock Lesnar in a rematch. That was a deal that was put together this week. It was something that Lesnar, among others, pushed for because I think Lesnar saw there's money in Bill Goldberg and didn't want to blow it off the first time. So Goldberg's line, "You're last," is the new once in a lifetime. Yesterday, Triple H announced that WWE will be holding a tournament on these here shores to crown the first ever United Kingdom champion. Just like the Cruiserweight Classic, but with more tea and crumpets. The competition will be held over 2 consecutive nights on Saturday the 14th and Sunday the 15th of January, presumably so it can be aired live in the afternoon for the American audience on the WWE Network. It will take place in Blackpool, a town very close to WWE head scout William Regal's heart, and Nigel McGuinness, one of the best wrestlers in recent times never to wrestle for WWE, will join Michael Cole on commentary for the event. Expect about 7 other people to join them for a 9-man booth or something. The 16 competitors include several of the UK independent scene's biggest stars. Pete Dunne, Joseph Connors, Trent Seven and Tyler Bate, who is somehow 19 years old. I just found that out yesterday and it's ridiculous. Right now, the tournament is just a one-off, but according to Triple H, our intent is in the long term to use this tournament as a launching pad for a brand new WWE weekly show produced right here
in the UK. Hopefully it'll be as wildly successful as the Cruiserweight Classic spinning off into 205 Live. I'm being sarcastic. Dave Meltzer expanded on WWE's overseas strategy on Wrestling Observer Live. I don't expect this to happen right away, although I suppose it could, but the idea of running a European tour or a European-based promotion with European wrestlers and the idea of running an Asian promotion with Asian wrestlers is very much talked about, yes. So we could essentially have WWE spin-off promotions all over the world. South America, Europe, Asia, like some form of wrestling McDonald's. I.e. you think you want it, but it's not good for anyone in the long run. It's a logical extension of how WWE became the #1 promotion in North America. Outmuscle, undermine, and ultimately end regional promotions. Back then in the 80s, this was mostly limited to their own continent. Now with increased globalization and reach through the WWE network, Vince McMahon and Triple H can conquer the territories of the world. The UK tournament announcement, potentially the first move in this global domination plan, comes at the same time WWE announced it's looking to raise $175 million in debt financing. As Meltzer commented on that news piece, WWE is looking for a lot of cash, more than they have in hand, to make some big moves. Just as coincidentally, I'm sure, WWE's move into the UK comes at the same time that ITV, one of the country's largest television stations, is resurrecting the World of Sport name for a one-off wrestling special, with reported plans to make it a regular program. Regal pointed out at WWE's press conference that the UK tournament was not a response to ITV, but Meltzer has been reporting on the WWE-ITV friction for weeks, arguing the ITV thing has caused the WWE to immediately make moves in that market, and pointing out that WWE have offered contracts to UK wrestlers that are neither for NXT or the main roster, but are low money guarantees that would see talent stay in the UK and be allowed to work indies. But WWE would get first dibs on bookings. These contracts have been described as mark deals by many in the wrestling business, and that WWE don't want you, they just don't want anyone else to have you. The theory is that these contracts would stop the wrestlers that signed them for working for ITV. Triple H did tell Newsweek that the wrestlers signed for the UK tournament will still be able to perform within the independent companies Rev Pros, ICWs and Progresses, and WCPW have tweeted, William Regal confirmed to us that there are zero restrictions on any of the wrestlers working for other UK promotions. But the WWE tournament clashes with Progress's debut show in Birmingham, where Dunn, Seven and Bate are all champions. If WWE do start up a weekly show, you'd expect them to pull wrestlers from other shows as and when they need them, just like they recently did with James Ellsworth for his booking at Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore show. Contrary to what The Rock always claimed, there's only so much pie in wrestling to go around. WWE want all that pie, which means the frankly brilliant and diverse British wrestling scene right now should be very, very wary.